Okay, let's get into this. If you've ever, plugged a screaming fuzz pedal into an old amp, or maybe just cranked up some single coils, you definitely know that sound, that constant hiss, that awful ground hum sometimes. It kills the silence between your notes. It's the worst.
It really is. It's like the enemy of dynamics, right?
Yep.
You want your playing to stop clean. But we're not actually here today to talk about all the modern digital stuff for noise. We're actually going to dive back into some analog history. Find maybe the first great compact solution, the BOSS NF1 analog noise gate.
Yeah, this isn't just some random old pedal. This thing came out way back in 1978.
Yeah.
And the NF1, it holds this really key title. It was BOSS's very first noise gate in that compact format. It showed up just when analog gear was getting, louder and frankly noisier. Musicians really needed something reliable, something small like a mute button and a pedal.
Exactly. So our mission today really is to figure out how this early analog circuit tackled such a big technical problem back then, and also why its design choices, especially how it tried to keep your tone intact, why that made it such a trailblazer. It pretty much set the stage for what came next in noise reduction gear.
Okay, so its job seems pretty clear. Shut the signal off automatically when you stop playing.
Right.
When the volume drops below a certain point. But how did it do that smoothly? How did it avoid sounding like someone just, yanked the cable out the second your note started to fade?
That's where the cleverness of early analog design comes in. See, the NF1 is completely analog, no digital chips in sight. It works using this link system. There's an envelope detector circuit, and that controls a voltage-controlled amplifier, or VCA.
Okay, hang on. Envelope detector and VCA. So the detector, it watches my playing volume.
Yes, basically. It measures the amplitude, the loudness of your guitar signal, and then it converts that loudness into a control voltage.
So if I play louder, the voltage goes up, and if I stop or play really quietly, the voltage drops down.
That's the basic idea, and that changing voltage is what tells the VCA what to do. You can think of the VCA like an automatic volume knob, or maybe a faucet for your audio signal.
Okay.
When that control voltage is high, because you're playing loud enough, the faucet is wide open, your sound goes through. But as soon as your signal drops below the level you've set, that voltage falls, and the VCA starts to smoothly close that faucet, fading out the audio and muting the unwanted noise.
Right, which brings us to that core idea you mentioned, transparency. They really wanted it to be transparent. But wait a sec. If just cutting the signal off completely like a hard mute was possible then, why go through the trouble of using a VCA? That seems like the really crucial bit about the NF1.
It absolutely is. That VCA is the key to avoiding what engineers sometimes call a hard mute. That really abrupt, choppy cutoff, it sounds totally unnatural, kills your sustain. It's just unpleasant.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
Exactly. So the VCA, because it's controlled by that smoothly changing voltage, it gives you a much softer, more natural fade into silence. It's designed to be musical noise reduction, which was super important for players in the late 70s. They were really focused on protecting their core tone in those all-analog signal chains.
It sounds like they weren't just trying to kill noise. They were trying to, politely escort it out the door. Clarity without chopping your sound to pieces.
That's a great way to put it. The NF1 was definitely built for players who cared about how their notes ended, not just how they started.
Okay, so it sounds pretty sophisticated inside, with the detector and the VCA working together. But the real genius, maybe, was how BOSS boiled all that down to just two knobs on the outside. Super simple.
Simplicity really is often the best approach, especially on stage. You just have the sensitivity knob that sets your threshold level, and then the decay knob, which handles how quickly the gate actually closes.
Let's talk sensitivity first. That's basically telling the pedal, okay, how quiet does my signal need to get before you start shutting things down?
Exactly right. That sets the trigger point. So if you turn the sensitivity up high, you're telling the gate don't close until the signal is really quiet. That's important if you've got, say, high output pickups or maybe a distortion pedal that's always adding a bit of hum or hiss. You need the gate to stay open through that lower level noise and only close when your actual note truly fades out.
Makes sense. And then the decay knob.
Yeah.
That adjusts the speed of the VCA closing down. It sounds like where the actual feel of the gating comes from.
It really is. That timing is everything for the musicality. It determines if you get a nice, gentle, slow fade out or if it's a really sudden, sharp stop. Oh, and just from a technical standpoint, we should probably mention the standard power stuff. It took a 9V battery, or the old BAS ACA adapter.
Ah, the ACA adapter. Fun times.
Yeah. And it used Boss's standard buffered electronic switching, like most of their pedals then. And considering it was only made for about 4 years, 1978 to 1982, the NF1 really did establish the basic idea of a compact noise gate pretty quickly, even though it wasn't around for that long.
Only 4 years. Wow. Yeah, that definitely makes it a collector's item these days. But let's bring it back to like practical use.
Yeah.
If I'm playing modern high game stuff today, why should I care about this specific, 40-something-year-old analog pedal? What was it especially good at back then that might still matter?
Well, because the things it was good at are still problems people face today, especially if you like vintage gear or just cranking your amp really loud.
Right.
The NF1 was particularly good at cleaning up really messy fuzz sounds. You know how some fuzzo pedals just have that constant background roar?
Oh, yeah. Or dealing with those old, noisy single-coil pickups. They were everywhere back then. I remember my first real amp in like this terrible basement practice space. The 60-cycle hum alone between songs was just deafening. A pedal like this would have been amazing for managing those messy live rigs, too. Bad power, long cables.
It absolutely would have been because, look, the NF1 doesn't magically fix the source of the noise. It doesn't eliminate hum from bad wiring. But what it does is dramatically improve the perceived clarity by getting rid of that noise floor between your notes. Yeah. And the fact that you could tailor how the gate closed just using those two simple knobs, that's what made it work so well in the real world.
Right. So if I wanted, say, a smooth, classic, bluesy kind of fade on the end of a note, I'd set the decay maybe halfway, let that VCA close down gently.
Exactly. That gives you that smooth musical end to the note. Really nice for cleaner tones where you want sustain to feel natural. But what if you were, a hard rock player? Early metal, maybe. You needed that sound to stop instantly for tight, choppy riffs.
Ah, okay. So then you'd crank up the sensitivity so it triggers easily.
Okay.
And you'd shorten the decay time, make it snap shut.
Precisely. That makes the gate close much faster. You get those really tight percussive stops that you need for heavy, distorted rhythm playing. And the fact that it could handle both ends of that spectrum just with simple analog circuits is pretty remarkable for the time.
No menus, no digital screens.
It's proof that sometimes, really effective control doesn't need to be super complicated.
That flexibility is definitely impressive. But let's be real for a second. Technology obviously moved on. If the NF1 was so great at being transparent and musical, why did BAS replace it? Why did they eventually create things like the NS2, which became like the standard noise gate for decades? What were the limitations? What parts of it showed its age, being early analog tech?
That's a really important question. It gets right to the heart of why noise gate technology evolved. The NF1 definitely shows those trade-offs you get with early analog designs. Its strengths were clear, simple controls, that really musical, natural-sounding gating action. And, of course, it was built like a tank in that classic BOSS enclosure.
Right, built to survive anything. But the weaknesses, that's why we have modern gates now, I guess.
Pretty much. The sources usually point to maybe 3 main limitations that pushed BOS towards their later designs. First, just a practical thing. No LED to show you when the gate was actually on or off.
Oh, right. Modern ones always have that light. So you were kind of guessing with the NF1.
Yeah, you had to rely purely on your ears. Second, its overall range of noise suppression was a bit limited compared to what digital gates could achieve later. It could handle typical hum and hiss pretty well, but maybe not, like extreme feedback squeals in super high gain situations.
Okay. And the third thing, you mentioned transparency was the goal.
Right. And this is the most interesting trade-off, I think. Despite that focus on transparency, that early analog VCA, it did introduce a tiny bit of signal coloration. It wasn't drastic, but it was there. That was the sonic compromise. The very part that gave it that nice musical fade also maybe added just a touch of its own character to the sound.
The classic analog paradox. You get the musicality, but maybe not absolute pristine neutrality.
Exactly. But still, we can't downplay its historical importance. The NF1 wasn't just a stepping stone. It really set the template. It directly led to every BAS noise suppressor that came after it. The NS1, the incredibly popular NS2, and even the fancy Wazacraft NS2W they make today.
So this one pedal basically defined BASS's whole approach to noise reduction for years and years. It proved that having a dedicated compact noise gate pedal was essential for cleaning up your tone, especially if you really cared about keeping your core sound intact. And I guess that unique musical way it closes. That's why collectors are still after the NF1 today, huh?
Absolutely. It's a cornerstone piece in the history of guitar effects, a simple musical answer to a common problem figured out decades ago using analog tech that was designed for a smooth flow, not just an abrupt cutoff.
A real testament to that kind of minimalist clarity-first engineering from BiSS back then. Okay, so here's a final thought for you to maybe chew on after this. Today, we often rely on really precise, complex digital algorithms, right? We want absolute surgical silence between notes, perfect quiet. But the NF1, its whole strength was in the musicality of that analog VCA closure, that soft, natural phase. So the question is, does our modern pursuit of perfect silence sometimes make us sacrifice that more natural, transparent decay that a simple analog circuit handled so elegantly?
It's worth thinking about. When you dial in that super tight instant stop on your high gain rig, are you maybe losing a little bit of that musical breath at the end of the note? Something to consider the next time you hear that little bit of hiss start to creep in between chords.